Many years ago, a church member told me the story of her 16th birthday. She received the most amazing gift. Her grandparents bought her a brand new car. And because this was 1965, her grandparents bought her a red convertible Mustang. As she told the story to me of her grandparents, she said that they were not wealthy people, but that they really wanted to give her something special. The car was, of course, her favorite, and she drove it for about 15 years. As she told me this story, I thought not only of her joy and excitement at the car, but I thought about her grandparents. You know, at the time I was a young mother myself, and I thought how amazing it would be to save up and to give a 16-year-old this amazing gift. Do you know that feeling? That feeling of sacrificing and saving up and going the extra mile to give someone something amazing? If you do, then you know the feeling that Advent is all about. Today we continue our series, The Heart of Christmas, and we are talking today in this season of extended Advent about generosity. Generosity is not your typical topic for Advent. But as I was planning the scriptures and thinking about this season, it was really the topic I couldn't get out of my head. I was thinking a lot about generosity and how much God has given us. God has given us so much. Our lives, the beauty of nature, family and friends, opportunities to love and to serve. And at this time of the year, what we think about is God's most generous gift to us, the gift of Himself, coming among us in Jesus. This is a season of generosity. A season when you and I are called to receive this most great gift. And so as we begin, I thought we might begin with a little meditation. So if you would, just clear the things off your lap and take a couple deep breaths. And if you're comfortable, go ahead and close your eyes. And as you breathe in, let yourself be present and relax in this moment. And I invite you to think about what you have to be grateful for this year. Maybe family, opportunities, maybe some time you did get to go away, or the enjoyment you had in your backyard. Just take a moment to think of those things that have been a gift to you this year. Now take a moment in the midst of all of those things in your mind's eye to just say thank you to God. Thank you. And let's take a couple more breaths, feeling that spirit of gratitude. And when you are ready, you can open your eyes. God is very generous with us. We have much to be grateful for in the season, no matter what has gone on. And I think when we are grateful for God's generosity, it changes us. It opens our heart a little. It gives us a chance to think about Not just this moment and its shortcomings, but all that God has done, all that God has gifted us with. We are talking about the heart of Christmas, and last week we started with talking about hope, and this week we're going to talk about generosity. And both of these weeks we're using texts from Isaiah. This week we're using a longer text. We're using Isaiah 35, verses 1 through 10, and I'm using the New Living Translation. And I thought what we do is we look at it in segments, 2 verses at a time, and reflect on those verses together. So let's hear the beginning of Isaiah 35.
Even the wilderness and desert will be glad in those days. The wasteland will rejoice and blossom with spring crocuses. Yes, there will be an abundance of flowers and singing and joy. The deserts will become as green as the mountains of Lebanon, as lovely as Mount Carmel or the plain of Sharon. The Lord will display his glory, the splendor of our God.
So the focus of this whole passage, and especially this beginning part of the passage, is about gratitude. It's about what God does. And in this part of the text, it's about the future. So it's more about what God will do. The text is set in the wilderness, and that's actually an important piece of what Isaiah is trying to say. Because the wilderness is not a great place, right? It's a place when we are aware of lack. Wilderness is often a place of loneliness, maybe even despair. But wilderness is also a place where we get to experience God's promises coming true. Wilderness is an actual place, of course, but it is also a metaphorical place. And in ancient Israel, it was a place that not only they had lived in, but a place that they spoke of. It was a place of scarcity and danger, a place of loneliness, but it was also the place where the people learned to trust God, where they learned that God would be faithful to them. Our first verses speak of God's generosity to the land, that God would restore the land, that God would make a way in the wilderness. Let's hear 2 more verses that build on this.
With this news, strengthen those who have tired hands and encourage those who have weak knees. Say to those with fearful hearts, be strong and do not fear, for your God is coming to destroy your enemies. He is coming to save you.
As the land is restored, so are God's people. The text speaks of tired hands and weak knees and fearful hearts, and how God meets us in the midst of this and saves us. I love the part of the text where it says, be strong and do not fear. Why do we not fear in the wilderness? Well, we don't fear because God is there, because God's presence is with us. The text continues with 2 more verses.
And when he comes, he will open the eyes of the blind and unplug the ears of the deaf. The lame will leap like a deer, and those who cannot speak will sing for joy. Springs will gush forth in the wilderness, and the streams will water the wasteland.
And then we hear of God's arrival, his generous coming among us, a coming that heals us and opens blind eyes and heals deaf ears. That helps us heal our infirmed bodies. This is the part of the text when we start hearing of the celebration that is going to come because of what God has done, what God will do. And I love the line where it says, springs will gush forth in the wilderness. So in the midst of dryness, in the midst of nothing growing, there becomes water in the wilderness. It's a text about abundance. It's a text about what God does. Next part of the text.
The parched ground will become a pool, and springs of water will satisfy the thirsty land. Marsh grass and reeds and rushes will flourish where desert jackals once lived. And a great road will go through that once deserted land. It will be named the Highway of Holiness. Evil-minded people will never travel on it. It will be only for those who walk in God's ways. Fools will never walk there.
So in this place was once lostness and wilderness, but now God makes a way. And the text calls it God's holy highway. And that leads us right into the last part of the text where it says this.
Lions will not lurk along its course, nor any other ferocious beast. There will be no other dangers. Only the redeemed will walk on it. Those who have been ransomed by the Lord will return. They will enter Jerusalem singing, crowned with everlasting joy. Sorrow and mourning will disappear. They will be filled with joy and gladness. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
You can almost see it, can't you? The picture that the text paints. People returning home, there being joy and singing and laughter, and the mourning and the sorrow has gone away. The text is about Thanksgiving. The text is about a celebration, and the text invites us in this season of Advent to lean into two things. The first is to see the generosity of God in coming among us. And the second is to hear the invitation from God to come home, to return to Him. Let's look at both of these. First, in God's generosity, He comes among us. And for us, we understand that to be He comes among us in the birth of Jesus. That's why this is a text that's often used during this season of Advent. This is actually one of the most very amazing things of our faith, that God would come among us, that God would come here and be born among us. Why would He do that? Well, I think it has all to do with love, doesn't it? It has to do with the fact that God so loved the world that He came among us. When we hear about God's love for us, that's really what the heart of Christmas is all about, this love that comes among us. Because like all generosity, this love cost Him. In Jesus' life and suffering and death, it cost Him, but it did not stop Him. As we talk about generosity, I think we have to start by talking about God's generosity to us in Him coming among us in Jesus. And then the second thing from today's text is that Advent and this text for Advent speaks of an invitation for you and for I to come to God, to return to Him. No matter where we've been, no matter how far we've strayed. I was reading an article this week that talked about how people's faith had grown during COVID, and people were saying they were closer to God. And I think that's great. But I'm going to guess for everyone who feels closer to God in this season, there are many people who feel further from God. Maybe those are the people who are dealing with isolation or who have lost jobs. Those who have gotten COVID and dealt with it, or those who have lost loved ones to it. There's many things that have happened in this season that may cause people to draw closer to God, but may also cause people to question their faith. In this Advent, this theme that we have, the heart of Christmas, means a whole bunch of things, but one thing that keeps jumping out at me is that it calls us to this change of heart and to get on this holy highway that God has laid out for us so that we might return to Him. We might draw near to Him in this time. This is our opportunity in this time. God pursues us. God pursued the people of Israel in the midst of their suffering, and God pursues the church today. We hear an echo of this in Luke's gospel, where it says, "Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, because he has come to his people and redeemed them." So, what is our response to all this? Couple things. First, we are called to open our hearts in this season. A lot of us protect our hearts, right? Protect our hearts from all that's going on in the world. I get that. But I think one of the things in this season is to see that Jesus has come among us, that God is here and he meets us in flesh and blood. He becomes one of us. I mean, the incarnation, it is one of the greatest mysteries and wonders of our faith, that God would come and become a person. To receive this and all that God has for us in this time, I think one of the things we have to do is be aware of our hearts and the hardness of them and be willing to open them even just a little bit. And second, I think that God also calls us out of his generosity to do our part too in being generous. Let me talk a little bit about that. This is the time in our church year where we pause and we talk about the church's vitality and the church's finances. And we talk about that just a couple times a year to let people know where the church is financially. It has certainly been a strange year for church finances. And thank you for your faithfulness. Your faithfulness has made a huge difference this year. I mean, really, huge difference. Let me give you a little update about where we are and where we hope to go. So I want you to be aware of some of the shortfalls we've had this year. We have a little bit of building use that we've always had. We have several user groups that use our facilities, and that has stopped during COVID. So that's been about $35,000. We also, since we're not together passing the plate, just that offering that would come in that way, which is about $15,000, also stopped. And in addition, we've had some decreases in pledges as people's financial lives have changed as well during COVID. Now, we've responded to all of this by cutting our expenses, by tightening our staff, and by using all of the funds that we have for the mission and ministry of this church. So the bottom line basically is that our budget for this year is almost flat. But we expect we'll be a bit short because of these other shortfalls. So if you are a regular part of this church, you would have received a stewardship letter last week or the week before. And whenever I send those out, I always feel like God calls me to be bold. And God calls me to be bold because I believe we are called to be in ministry and mission through his church. When we give through his church, it makes a tremendous difference. It is a calling we have as people of faith. I feel I get to ask you to be generous every year because we want to continue to do the ministry we do and expand it. We want to continue to have an associate pastor. We want to continue to make disciples of Jesus Christ. We want to continue to expand, even in these times, what we are doing. Because people need God more than ever. So I invite you to prayerfully consider your giving for this year. And I invite you to increase your giving for this year. We are called to give a tithe of our income, which is 10%. So if you're not quite there yet, I invite you to take another percentage or 10 forward in getting there. And if you are someone who already tithes, I invite you to step beyond a tithe for the mission of God in the world. Now, if you're newer to church, or this is new to you that people give to the church, let me explain a little bit about why we do this. I think when we understand, then it helps us understand why our giving matters and how God uses us to move his ministry forward. So a couple things I always think about. First, when we give, it gives us an opportunity to acknowledge our view of life and what we believe in. Certainly in the world, people think of money as theirs. And so whatever they do with it is because it's theirs and they decide. The Christian view of all that we have, not only our money, but our time, our energy, our focus, our ideas that all of this is God's. We are stewards of it. And so we are called to use what we have for God's work in the world. It is one of the ways we honor God by making that a priority in our giving. Early on in my ministry, I learned a lot about tithing and how to give and how to figure this out. And I remember one of the women in the church said to me, if you're spending more on Starbucks than you are on supporting the church, your life is a little out of whack. It's a practical way to think of it. We're called to make our giving to God a priority because what that enables us to do is to say, yeah, everything I have is God's, and I want to honor him with how I use it. Second, when we give, we have an opportunity to show gratitude to God. You know, we started off by talking about all the things we have in our life to be grateful for. And yes, we say thank you. This is very important. But I think it also is important to show our gratitude by how we use our finances. So when we give, we show our gratitude to God. It's one of the ways, a tangible way, that we say thank you. And then last, when we give, we have an opportunity to experience generosity. You know, when we are giving, we are imitating God and God's generosity. I think when we give, we participate in the divine nature because we take a step outside of our own fears and anxieties and prioritize this generosity that God has toward us and toward his world. I started off with a story of my friend and her Mustang convertible. She loved that car. But I think the bigger part of the story is that her grandparents, they loved giving that to her. You and I have an opportunity to be like those grandparents, to be generous for the things that matter in our lives. Because when you and I are generous, we experience the heart of Christmas. Ways you can participate today in making a pledge is you can bring a pledge by the church, but you'll also see a QR code on the screen, and that will take you to make a pledge online for the year. And I just want to give you a little update since we sent the letter out last week. So far, 24 of you have responded, 1 brand new pledge, and of the 17 that increased their pledge, we saw an increase of 16%. God calls us to generosity. Join me. Let us pray.